Good Thursday morning, everybody, and welcome to Arnie's Fantasy World of Sports. And Lenny, you are way too kind with the introduction. And I'm going to kind of run with something Lenny started talking about this morning. And I'm going to I decided what I was going to do. I'm going to save the discussion about the rest of the amateur draft. It's in June. It's a little ways off. And I was planning the show last night, and I thought, let's talk about these teams that are going to benefit or players that may benefit reality and fantasy based upon the universal DH. I mean, there are all the National League teams, okay? The National League, of course, and I think this could be the precursor to 2021 as all having DHs across all of Major League Baseball. I think this year makes that transition so much easier because we're going to have it this year. And I want to talk about the National League teams and the players who now are much more or may be much more fantasy relevant than they would have been, say, in February. We'll start in the National League West, and we'll just progress east. How's that? So let's start with the Dodgers. And the Dodgers, of course, I think are the cream of the crop in that division, maybe in all of the National League. And you got to say the Dodgers have a really good lineup. When you look at Bellinger, you look at even rookie Gavin Lux, you've got Muncy, you've got Seager at shortstop, Turner at third, Smith at catcher, Betts in the outfield. I mean, this team absolutely loaded, and now you've got a DH spot. And so where there's a DH, there's an offensive opportunity. And I want to talk about at least three players that I think now directly benefit being with the Dodgers with that DH. And there's some righties and there's a lefty, Matt Beatty, who can play outfield, who can play first base. I think he now, as a left-handed bat, is a player that the Dodgers have more use of. Jock Peterson, who was supposed to be traded. The trade was revoked, whatever you want to call it. He's another player now, much more fantasy relevant. A.J. Pollock for the Dodgers, who hit 15 homers last year. With Mookie Betts coming over, certainly he was going to see a reduced role in that lineup. Now with the DH, Pollock maybe get more at bats. And, of course, there's Chris Taylor, who, with Gavin Lux coming up, supposedly, presumably, the starting second baseman, Seager ready to play a full year at shortstop, Turner at third. You got Betts and Bellinger. You got a loaded outfield. Not a lot of opportunity, it looked like, for Chris Taylor. But now with the DH, Taylor. So you got these four players. There may be others who are much more fantasy relevant. And, it's going to be interesting and this just covers all 15 National League teams. When we come back together and we have the 2 or 3 weeks of getting our lineups straightened out, it's going to be a waiver wire fantasy within itself. When the teams come out and say, this person's going to be our primary DH. Okay, that person would not have probably had a role. If the primary DH had been a regular starter, then somebody's got to go into that starting lineup. So we're all going to be tuned into that. But these are four players I think the Dodgers certainly will be utilizing more than they would have. Another team, the Giants. Now, I don't know about you. I'm not crazy about giant bats to start with. But now that you've got the DH, Buster Posey, you've got Joey Bart, who's a rookie catcher, who's highly touted, very good. Will they allow Joey Bart to take over that catcher role? Will they now let Buster Posey DH more? And I'm just, the thing with Posey, he's lost some power, but has anybody ever thought he's not a good hitter? And if you're in leagues where batting average matters, base hits, doubles, Posey certainly is still a clutch bat. They've also, in the winter, taken on Wilmer Flores. And now Wilmer Flores, a strong right-handed batter against left-handed pitching. He not great with the glove, but certainly he's able to fill in for the Giants. They've also got Hunter Pence, who's got some age on him, and we've talked about this on Lenny's show, talked about it here. The most infield hits of any active player, Hunter Pence. Now he could DH some. Remember when he came back up with Texas last year? and he was in the DH role. He thrived, hitting over 300 for a lot of the season. And now the Giants may decide to use Hunter Pence in that role. I think he's the big winner for the Giants. I think he now probably plays every day. And playing every day, whether it's a DH or in the outfield, Pence can put up some decent numbers. And if you're drafting late or needing that extra outfielder, Pence may be your guy. Let's move down to San Diego, where we've got a flooded outfield. I mean, you've got Trent Grisham, who they got over in a trade. Good morning, Andrea. You've got Trent Grisham, who came over in a trade from Milwaukee. You've got Will Myers. You've got Josh Naylor. You've got Tommy Pham. And you've got Franchy Cordero. 5 potential starting outfielders for 3 slots. And now you add a DH. And the assumption I'm making is that one of these 5, if not 2 of these 5, will probably assume the primary DH responsibilities. Now, Josh Naylor, lefty. Cordero, lefty. Myers, righty. Pham, righty. Grisham, lefty. So, you've got a mixed bag there. The Padre players, everything I read is that the Padre players are in awe of Franchy Cordero. They compare his speed to Tatis. Got a great hit tool. You know, the left-handed portion of the DH monster is the dominant one because they're more right-handed pitchers. And so I'm really thinking that the big winner for San Diego may well be either Naylor or Cordero or both. Because if they're both playing against right-handed pitching, one could certainly DH, one could certainly play the field, whereas you only could have chosen one to play prior to the DH universal rule. Cordero, I think, will excite. I think Cordero is a great add now in fantasy. Get him while you can. I believe he will play a big role for this team this year. And now with the realigned division, hey, you never know what's going to happen out there. Or any of the options. I mean, I've seen one option where you go to the Cactus Grapefruit League. You got to love San Diego in that scenario. If you go to the 10-team, 3 divisions, well, the Dodgers are the cream of the crop. But again, you've got a chance in that situation. I think when you look at the other teams, Seattle, oh, come on. San Francisco, oh, come on. They're better than Colorado, I believe. They may be as good or better than Arizona. You've just got a great opportunity, better than Anaheim. They're pitching. I think San Diego is a real sleeper, and I think on a team of sleepers, Franchy Cordero is very much somebody to look out for. Talking about the Diamondbacks. Now, this is where I think Yasiel Puig could come into play. Still a free agent, and I look at the Arizona bench, if you will, and I see Kevin Cron and I see Jake Lamb, and I'm not enamored, thrilled, swept away by either of those choices. Could the Diamondbacks go out and sign a Yasiel Puig to serve as a DH outfielder, rotate their positions? Now, we know Peralta is a killer against right-handed pitching, and he's working on his numbers against lefties. I don't know that the DH benefits Arizona as much as other teams with the current roster. That's all I'm saying. And finally, in what is currently the National League West, the Colorado Rockies. And the Rockies have 2 separate scenarios going on. They've got several outfielders. They've got Blackmon, of course, Charlie Blackmon, fantasy darling. David Dahl, can he stay healthy? Never has. Ian Desmond, who's definitely on the downside of his career. Then you've got Tapia, and you've got Sam Hilliard. Now, I'm really intrigued with Sam Hilliard, and I think Hilliard is potentially the big winner here. The news coming out of camp was that Hilliard, he had a 35-homer, 22 steal season last year for AAA Albuquerque. He had played 5 weeks in the major leagues at the end of the year, during which he hit 7 home runs in a 5-week period. and had a 273 average. Now, we know the Coros factor. I'm not even going to get into that. But the main thing I'm saying here is Hilliard put up some really good numbers and was certainly in the mix for a roster spot. Now, with the rosters expanded, with the universal DH, I really have a good feeling about Hilliard. Now, they still have those 5 outfielders. The problem there is you've got so many players. But do you really think Desmond is going to be there all year? Do you think he's going to stick? Do you think he's going to suddenly discover the fountain of youth? I've never really been that carried away with Tapia. Maybe I've not seen enough of him. And David Dahl, frankly, can't stay on the field. Now, they've got another option with the DH, and it's utilizing infielders. Because you've got Rogers, McMahon, Hampson. And again, there was so much last year. Let me go through the chat room real quick. Andrea Beerman still with me. Corona, you left. Chris has left. DK Lush has left. Oh my gosh, come back, guys. Where are you? But I do want to say good morning to the Amazings. Doug Boyle, Taco. And we've got some guests, Billy and Larry. There you go. Whoever you are, come on, log in, sign in. Join us every day here on the Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports Network. But as I was going back to the Rockies, they've got the infielders of Rogers, McMahon, and Hampson. And they've got enough spots for 2 of them. Now, we know Hampson can play outfield, but frankly, how many of you were impressed with Hampson last year in his time in the major leagues? I was not. McMahon, pretty good. Rogers has got all the hype. The Rockies, I guess what I'm saying here, they have so many options. I think it's way too early to go and gamble on grabbing an extra Rocky to put on your roster, fantasy rosters. I think what we do here is we see how when we get back to playing, and if now they're talking about late June, early July, let's look at it mid-June. Let's see who's getting that discussion amongst the manager there, because what they say, they're going to be listening to it. And I think we'll certainly carry that information here on the network. So that's just a quick look at what is currently National League West. We move now to the Central. I'm going to start with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Start at the bottom of the division. How about that? And, what I find interesting there is the Pirates have pretty much committed to Dyson being their center fielder this coming year. And I'm very much aware that Dyson is a older player. Pirates are talking about letting him bat at the top of the order because of his stolen base potential. Not much on base percentage, so a little concerned there. But let's just assume for a moment that Dyson is going to be in the outfield, which now leaves Polanco coming off shoulder surgery. All reports are he's healthy. And you've got Brian Reynolds, who really had a great rookie year last year for the Pirates. A player that I could see for Pittsburgh getting more at-bats with the DH position is Jose Ozuna. Jose Ozuna, great power bat. Pittsburgh's going to need all the runs they can muster. If you put him in there with Josh Bell, he gives Bell a little more protection. Of course, Bell's a switch hitter. But I think Ozuna for Pittsburgh could be a huge beneficiary of the DH. Let's move around a little bit, shall we? Let's talk about the Milwaukee Brewers. Their outfield, it looks like currently is going to be Yelich, Avisail Garcia, who came over in the offseason, and Lorenzo Cain. The Brewers had talked about Ryan Braun playing at first base, and they went out and got the first baseman from Toronto in the offseason, who's a switch hitter, by the way. So I can see Ryan Braun now, who is still a pretty good hitter, guys, getting a lot of time at that DH position for the Milwaukee Brewers. And Braun, let's just take a look at some of his numbers from last year, and let's also take a look at Justin Smoke, who they got in the offseason. Last year, Braun hit .285 with 22 homers and 11 RBIs. Now, he had a shoulder issue. The Brewers have already said he will not be a regular outfielder. They've got Smoke, who last year hit 22 homers for Toronto. He's a switch hitter. probably going to be the primary first baseman. But now with the